this is his confession about how many people he's killed. We're going to get into all this, but this is what he's confessed to. I don't know if you can see it, but the first one ever is a Dr. Leacock. He says he poisoned him. I'm going to run down the list because this is all the 27. And just real quick. A Dr. Russell killed by a blow with a chair at the castle. Miss Julia, Connor, and Pearl, we did talk about those. Mm-hmm. Mr. Rogers killed by a blow with an oar, which is kind of like a paddle. While fishing, Charles Cole struck with a piece of lead pipe in the castle. Lizzie, a domestic, suffocated in the vault. Sarah Cook, an unborn child, suffocated in the castle vault. I mean, this thing just goes on and on and on. So these are all, and look, Mr. Warner, the Warner Glass Bending Company, boiled in oil and steam in the kiln at the castle. Now, here's the thing with this, though, because half of these names, they did look and find these people still alive. So what he's doing is trying to confuse the newspaper by adding names in there that he knew he didn't kill, right? Which is really confusing to everything. So you have Holmes's alleged victims, and then you have Holmes's true victims. His true victims, according to the guy who does the Patreon I was telling you about, the H.H. Holmes tour guide, there's like 10 of them. Those are his true victims. It's like 10 of them. And we went over quite a bit of them. Yeah. So in this episode, I kind of want to end it up. I want to go through Holmes's background. I also want to talk about one mistress that I feel is really important to the story. And then I want to go back to the grave, digging up his grave. I want to revisit that one more time.
Cool.
All right, I want to start with this quote. This is what Holmes says in his confession. Quote, like the man-eating tiger of the tropical jungle, whose appetite for blood has once been aroused, I roamed about the world seeking whom I could destroy. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? The last one was inside the murder castle. So we talked about like the room that he put asbestos on and then lit it on fire and stuff like that. We're also going to talk about like the type of oil that he used to suffocate the victims. You would light a little bit of this oil and it would like fill up the room with this poisonous gas. So we'll talk about that stuff. But
crazy.
Yeah, he's pretty crazy.
I mean, super smart, but definitely didn't use it for the good of society.
Two of the victims that were found that we know are true Holmes victims were sisters. Minnie Williams, I'll show you a photo of her right now. Let me pull up her. This is Minnie Williams. And the reason we know that she is a victim and her sister is because her bones were found in the castle. This is also one of the ones he was like, I didn't kill her. She went and married someone, in Philadelphia or whatever, and just kind of threw
He's just making shit up.
Exactly. But let me talk a little bit about her because she's actually really important to the story. She was born in the South, but the thing about her is somehow, and I couldn't find out how, maybe it was because she was born poor, like drunk father or stuff like that. Somehow she inherited a large amount of land in the South. And she had met H.H. Holmes, became his mistress / secretary / typewriter, and he convinced her to transfer a $50,000 deed of real estate over to him. They described her as like childlike, quote, hardly knowing right from wrong in such matters. So at 24, she moves to Chicago. She's his personal secretary, transfers all this southern property over. He then does a mock ceremony marrying her, which he's already married twice over, and then he's going to kill her. But there is a problem. She has a younger sister who is inquiring about her as well.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. So Minnie's younger sister, Anna, came to visit them in Chicago, and after this, neither Minnie or Nanny were ever seen alive again. Anna, Nanny, same thing, were seen again. Holmes came out and said that the younger sister actually hit the older sister with a chair because she was jealous over Holmes.
Wow.
And
Dang, that sounds like WWE.
No shit. However, what we know to really happen was, even though he blamed Minnie for her sister's death, he eventually admitted to killing them both, chloroforming Minnie in her sleep, and then burying her body in a cellar. Now, I did find something actually really interesting on this. There was two victims who actually escaped, and I don't think this is talked about much, but This is from the St. Paul Globe. The police were informed today, this is in 1895, the police were today informed that at the time Holmes was first supposed to have left Chicago, he did not go any farther than the Stockyards district, where he opened a restaurant under the name of H. Howard. He employed a number of young women as waitresses, and it is said to have had a new force nearly every day. Among them were two girls who came from Wisconsin. A few nights after they began work in the neighborhood was startled by female screams coming from the Howard restaurant. Several men ran to the building and were in time to meet the two girls as they ran out into the hallway leading into the house. They were clad only in their night clothes, and it was some minutes before they could be quieted sufficiently to tell their story. They said they had been sleeping together and had been awakened by a man who gained an entrance to their room and who had placed a wet cloth about their faces. They thought the cloth had been saturated with chloroform. So that if that story is true, that gives us a good insight of how he would instantly incapacitate the women. He would sneak into their room because guess what? It's a hotel and he has all the keys. He would sneak into their room and put a wet cloth on their face of chloroform. Then they'll wake up either being tortured, suffocated in the vault, or whatever. But if that story is true, then that is a good example of how he would do it. He would sneak into their rooms at night. Wow. So I found that very interesting as well. So anyway, let's continue. What do you guys think? I'm not getting any feedback here.
I mean, I think it's just crazy the extent of the things that he will do, you know?
Like when you're that dedicated to a cause, there's no stopping you until death, I feel like.
And he got away with a lot, so it probably boosted his confidence that he can talk his way out of anything. And he kind of did.
Yeah. I feel like also when you continue to get away with stuff, not only does it boost your confidence, but it makes you want to do it more because if he's killing people and he gets an adrenaline rush, it almost becomes like a drug.
Yeah.
Right? So he's doing this to get this rush, and he keeps getting away with it. And so that, I think, is why his crimes escalated over time as well.
All right, this is...
because it was wasn't enough.
Yeah.
This is what he says about Minnie, the two sisters right here. Can you read that?
It was an easy matter to force her to assign to me all she possessed. After that, she was immediately killed in order that no one in or about the castle should know of her having been there, save for the man who burned her clothing. It was the footprint of Nanny Williams, as later demonstrated by that of the most astute lawyer and detective, Mr. Copps, of Fort Worth, that was found upon the painted surface of the vault door made during her violent struggles before her death.
Now, this is really interesting right here because remember I told you he bought a vault?
Yes.
And what he did was he got the vault built before he got the castle built, right? And after the vault was placed and the walls were built around it, the creditors came to collect payment for the vault. And he said, I'm not paying you anything. You can just remove the vault. But if you damage my walls, I'm going to sue you, type of thing. Anyway, that vault that was right there in the basement was supposedly used for suffocating these victims. Jesus. And one I'm going to tell you about tonight, he starved one victim in there, as we're going to talk about tonight. But he would put a little bowl in there mixed with some sort of chemical that they never figured out what it was. But if you add a little bit of water, like a reagent or something, it'd make this poisonous gas. And this quote you just read, they said it was Minnie's footprint found in the vault. However, a conflicting report says it's another victim, a Millie, which we're going to go over. She's really important. But anyway, the reason her footprint was stuck in the vault is because she stepped on that bowl of mixture and it kind of burnt into the vault, and then she stepped in it. And that's why her footprint was still there, almost like wet cement in the vault. That's how they knew he was suffocating women in the vault. Isn't that crazy? All right, let's go over this dude's background real quick. obviously he was born in Michigan, right there where Sable is. How close are you to was it Gilmington where he was born? How close are you there to where he was, his little village town he was born in? He went to a village schoolhouse, and I didn't see anything, and no one else has really seen anything that, like, no head injuries. There was no abuse from the family or anything. His mother, his father, they weren't abusing him. There are reports that they had locked him up in the attic and starved him a little bit.
Jeez.
But honestly, I think that was just really harsh punishment. There's nothing concrete to say, okay, this is why he turned out this way. There is one incident, though, that he cites as the possible reason he became obsessed with the anatomy and human dissection. That was on his 5th birthday. He was bullied, and he was in the village schoolhouse. 2 bullies knew that Holmes, well, I'll call him Mudgett. His name was Mudgett. Mm-hmm. 2 bullies knew that Mudgett hated the doctor's office. He just got this queasy feeling walking by it every day.
That's interesting.
So after school, these 2 bullies had shoved him into this science lab with a skeleton, a human skeleton in it. It was like a little closet. They shoved him in there, no lights or anything, just with the skeleton. And he was basically locked in this closet with a skeleton. And he talks about this in his confession, kind of pointing to that may be the reason that he became who he became. But if you can read this is actually from his confession right here.
I had been brought face to face with one of its grinning skeletons, which with arms outstretched seemed ready in its turn to seize me. It was a wicked and dangerous thing to do to a child of tender years and health, but it proved a heroic method of treatment destined ultimately to cure me of my fears and to inculcate in me first a strong feeling of curiosity and later a desire to learn, which resulted in years afterwards in adopting medicine as a profession.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So apparently that's how he got to that. If you ask Jeff Mudgett, the great-great-grandson, he'll say in his book that Holmes was really religious and he did attend like a Catholic school, and there was a priest that had raped him at 6 years old. Now,
Jesus.
Now his book is really out there, right? So
You mean not just the fact that his body wasn't in that cemetery?
Well, we'll get back to that. His book is based on these alleged documents that he found written from his great-great-grandfather.
Right.
So it's presented as a true story. I believe a lot of it is fiction. Okay, now that we're at the last episode, I can kind of tell you, right? It's a really good book, and it dives really deep into the author's own psyche. He's really leaving himself vulnerable with it, and it really is a really good book. But it has him like talking to his grandfather, like his grandfather still exists, right? So he's like this spectral thing.
Sounds entertaining.
It really is, but the author, it's almost like he has schizophrenia, and Holmes is trying to have him kill somebody and kind of carry on his legacy. In fact, he does talk about that. Like Holmes tried to convince him to kill like his neighbor. Like this is in Jeff's book. It's a really good book, but it's like it's a lot.
So he was in the book. He's saying that the grandfather that doesn't exist, like he was talking to him to convince him to kill his neighbor.
So in the book, Jeff says that H.H. Holmes, his great-great-grandfather, had escaped the prison before his execution, went to South America, and did a slew of other murders. I mean, there's one really brutal murder in there where he murders a matador. And it is super gruesome. I'm talking about super like torture, gruesome shit like that. But we do know for a fact that there was a spectral Holmes, kind of like the Jake Bird hex that we talked about, where a lot of people connected with the case of H.H. Holmes died right after. So he was speculating that Holmes did escape, and he was just killing him off.
Interesting.
Anyway, getting back to my point, he says in his book that at 6 years old, he was raped by the priest who eventually ends up dying after Holmes is executed. So that was like one of the people he killed. But anyway, I'm going to read this from Bloodstains. A sudden pain seared through my flesh and soul. This is after the priest tells him to take his pants down. I refused to scream or protest, not willing to give him that degree of satisfaction. Besides, my silence silence made no difference, for he made noise enough for both of us again and again. I memorized each sound, every movement, and the colors all around me, as if time had stopped for this one moment in this sacred place. I would remember this foul act for the rest of my life. If that is true, that definitely could have impacted him to do some of this stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but I don't know. You really have to make your own decisions with that book. Let's talk about Emmeline Segrand. She is the final footprint from what most people think. She was supposedly the most beautiful mistress he's ever had. I'm going to show you a picture of her, right? This is her right here. Apparently, she was like really beautiful, but I don't know. I don't really see it.
It's not your type.
Apparently, she was really beautiful. That was. I mean, it's a sketch.
That's not fair. It's just a sketch.
Yeah.
I get it, but some of those other girls were hotter, like way hotter than that.
Apparently, she
that
was
is
really
just one
beautiful.
artist's interpretation of how she looked.
Yeah.
I mean, she was...
And that's what I tell myself when I look at video images of myself. This is just one computer's
interpretation.
perspective.
All right.
Yes.
So here's like, apparently like that's what she looked like. I don't know.
Oh, wait, she kind of looks like me.
With a bowl cut.
No, like the facial features.
Her story is interesting. She was actually a stenographer in Dwight, Illinois. She was working with a really famous doctor who ran an Alcoholics Institute. This predated Alcoholics Anonymous, and this institute was around for about 100 years or more. But Dr. Keeley, she was the secretary, the typist at his institute. And this is how Peitzel, who was an alcoholic, met her and then went to Holmes and was like, dude, there's this really hot girl. You can get her to work at the castle. And that's what he did. Now, most likely, Holmes never admitted to killing her, but they did find her clothes, and the family received all these letters saying that she's gotten married and this and that and the other, and it was just all farce, right? They found her burnt clothes, and they think that that was her footprint in the vault that was melted in the acid. Now, the thing about her is, like most of the mistresses, he got rid of them after they served their purposes, or he had gotten them pregnant. And Emmeline supposedly had gotten pregnant because she had went to talk to a priest, and this is documented, and a priest listened to her, said she told the priest that she's pregnant, and then the priest insisted that she must marry the man. And Holmes actually took her to some place in Minnesota using a name that he can't even remember and married her, like under a fake name.
He marries everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this is interesting right here because she was actually locked in the vault and forced to write her family letters. She had to write letters, so it was her handwriting saying that she's married and
Happy.
and that she's happy and, stop looking for me and shit like that. He did this telling her that if you write these letters, I'll let you live. The whole time she was in the vault, he was starving her, and he may have starved her to death. That's why she was trying to get out of the vault, and then she knocked over the bowl of acid. No one knows, though. It's all like conjecture. But It was her footprint, that final footprint, found at the door of the vault, which is really interesting. Let's go back real quick and talk about the first episode where I said that they were digging up. Remember this? I think it was the University of Pennsylvania that was digging. Yeah, Pennsylvania's Museum of Archaeology was digging up the remains of H.H. Holmes. The reason that they were doing this was because, and the History Channel had put like this huge American Ripper thing together, like a documentary or whatever. But Jeff Mudgett came out with his book and said, hey, I believe that my great-great-grandfather escaped, and I am willing to submit my own DNA if a body is found.
Damn.
The body was actually in an unmarked grave, and if you read Jeff's book, which is a really great book, he talks about finding the letters and like a map and everything to where the grave is. And they finally found it. It's an unmarked grave. They did sonar to see if there was anything down there, and it was. That's how they found the grave. They dug into the grave, like we talked about last time, and obviously they found this right here, which
empty coffin.
Is an empty coffin.
After that much time, though, would still see something there? Like,
there would at least be fragments of bones.
Okay, so I kind of wasn't completely honest on the first one. You know how I like to do things, right?
No, not you.
A lot of times,
you're very straightforward.
A lot of times with these burials in the 1800s, these bodies were getting dug up. So it was customary to have a decoy box.
Like a false bottom almost,
but a false top, I guess, or is it still a false bottom? Yeah,
a false casket. However, if we go back to the execution day. If you ask Jeff Mudgett, and if you read his book, he tells how he convinced another guard to take the rope, basically get hanged for him. All right. If you ask him, that's how it happened. Most people won't believe that, though. The stipulation with Holmes was he would give his money away to charities or to help the police or whatever if he got his own wishes. And that thing I said about the Pinkertons,
right? That
was true.
Yeah,
all of that is true. Another stipulation is if he was to get hanged, he had to be buried in concrete, which was very weird and very unique at the time.
Yeah, who would do that? Who would spend money on
specific.
That? Yeah.
Exactly. The reason he wanted to do that is because he was so notorious and so well known, he knew he would get dug up. And if he's in concrete, you can't just lift up concrete. So the thinking is under that box, that decoy box, there would be a slab of concrete.
But they didn't check?
And Holmes would be in that concrete. Now, what that would do, if he is in that concrete, it's basically, have you seen Star Wars where Han Solo is like in that,
bronze?
Yeah. It's basically like that. Like all his brain would still be intact. All of his skin would still be pretty much intact. His teeth would be intact. He would even have his puffy mustache if he was in that concrete. And so when they got rid of that, and I left this out of the first episode, obviously, because that's how I do, they found this. This is in the concrete right here.
Oh, interesting.
Supposedly, this is his skull.
Thank you, Brandon. Carbonite. Sorry. No, John doesn't watch it.
I don't watch it.
He doesn't do the Star Wars.
No, I don't do that.
I like Star Wars, the original.
I guess when I was a kid, I remember being into it because the like Phantom Menace and stuff was coming out when we were younger, but I literally have zero recollection of any of it.
I remember saving the Mountain Dew cans with that stupid Jar Jar character on it.
Jar Jar Binks.
The only reason we saved them is because we thought they would be worth something. I saw the movie and it sucked. I was like, this is so stupid. I was like 14. I was like, this is the dumbest movie I've ever seen. Like, I had watched the original ones.
Yeah.
And the original ones were GOAT, right?
Yes.
Like Hawk Twa shit, but these new ones were just fucking terrible.
We've been
Hawk Twa. Did you say Hawk Twa?
We've been saying it wrong, apparently. Hawk Twa.
All right. Go into this. Tim Bechtel, the geophysicist, climbed down into the trench and as groundwater started to seep in, inserted the probe through one of the holes. This is through the fake coffin.
That doesn't sound pleasant.
Within 4 inches, quote, we hit something solid. That was the concrete.
That's what she's
I think it's you no longer say the word cement.
Yeah, I don't say
that. I was going to comment on that earlier, but I thought it best to just leave it alone.
I can't not.
I'm very proud of you.
He just avoids the word altogether because he knows we'll make.
Yeah, he'll say concrete instead, right?
This is what Samantha Cox said. She is a Penn State archaeologist. Quote, it was the first time we knew absolutely for certain that we found what we were looking for. The wooden board was quickly taken to conservationists at the university who used ultraviolet and infrared lighting to enhance and confirm the writing while the dig continued. The writing on that wooden overlay said Mudgett and H.H. Holmes.
Did they still were they still able to test the bones to confirm it was a match?
It says Mudgett and
wow.
So this was on the coffin. So they knew they had the right one. Now, at this point, Jeff is the great-great-grandson. You know, he's on the hook, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to submit my DNA so we can know for sure, right? Mm-hmm. This is crazy since he was buried in cement, and it took 12 hours for them to chisel this cement out so they wouldn't break the body in any way, because he's been in there for 120 years. The doctor says she stuck her face into the grave to examine the skull not long after the first glimpse. Quote, his bushy mustache was still intact. As soon as it was exposed to air, though, it started to flake off. So he still had his mustache.
Wow.
Because, you can't, no oxygen, no bacteria was getting into it. So
they got a hair sample.
As soon as it was exposed to oxygen, it started to come off, which is fucking nuts. It remained on his face, right? And not only that, quote, and his brain also remained intact in his skull. That's crazy. His brain was still there. Wow. Right? So
did they save it? Or did they put
leave
it back?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I didn't look that up, actually. I don't know if...
I would imagine they would have just put it back once, take your
Although,
sample.
I mean, I guess they would have had to ask for permission from the family to keep it, but with Dahmer's, they weren't allowed to keep a brain sample, but if they were allowed to examine that brain, that would be
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would. Oh, let's watch this little clip. I don't know why they would want to keep Dahmer's brain, but I will tell you, if I had to eat dinner with someone, it would definitely be Dahmer.
He's making fun of the whole Ariana Grande thing right now.
Yeah, hold on. Let's watch this little clip. This is
I must have missed that pop culture reference because I don't.
Apparently, she made a comment that if she could have dinner with one person, it would be Jeffrey Dahmer, and she's getting a whole bunch of hate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why they asked her a question.
Just for that, she's not getting hate for cheating on her husband with her co-star and breaking up 2 marriages.
Guess not.
I would have said, if someone asked me that question, I would have said myself, obviously, yo.
So did they test the
bones? They did. So let's see see how it turns out. What do you think? Do you think it was the real guy?
Yeah.
I want to say that yes, because he had all of this information, but a real twist in the story would be no, he's not actually.
Or inconclusive.
That would have.
Yeah.
We would have all heard about it if it wasn't the same guy. Jeff Mudgett said, quote, it actually brought tears to my eyes, and I was trying to figure out, why am I crying for this monster of a man? That's what he said. Cracking open the 130-year-old cement, as you can imagine, is tough work. That's what Mudgett said. Inside the coffin, they found the skeleton. Quote, chills went up and down my spine to see the skeleton and the skull with the brain still inside, which is a phenomenon that scientists still have not explained. Scared the heck out of me. After 2 months of DNA analysis, dental records, and DNA testing revealed a, quote, conclusive link, end quote, to Jeff Mudgett, proving the remains in the grave were Holmes.
Wow.
So, but he says, I mean, if you read his book is really good.
It's crazy, though, how he still had that map that pointed him to that grave. You know what I mean? So, that's pretty crazy.
So I'm on this guy's page.
Also, all of his clothes would still be there, too, right? Those wouldn't have disintegrated, right?
So he would have got killed in prison garb. I'm on this guy's Patreon page, who is the H.H. Holmes tour guide. I've mentioned him before. And I had asked him about Jeff Mudgett's account and if he thought there was any validity to it. And he responded to me saying something to the effect of, him and Jeff are really good friends, and Jeff actually had admitted that it was a fictional account. However, the book is really well written. If you definitely, I would try to get it on an audiobook. You definitely will not be disappointed. It goes through his psyche as well.
Sounds super interesting, honestly. Yeah.
I really do think he found journals, because if you read the book, you'll see, but I don't think that a lot of the stories, I mean, I think he died, obviously. I think this was him. Yeah,
that's him.
I think this is him.
Okay, now I understand. So he actually did hang that day, is basically what the evidence is saying.
Yeah, so
Okay.
While the evidence ended speculation surrounded one a centuries-old theory, Mudgett said it still hasn't proved whether or not his theory that Holmes was also Jack the Ripper is false. Quote, there are too many coincidences for this to be another bogus theory, Mudgett said. I know that evidence is out there to prove my theory, and I'm not going to give up until I find it. So that's what he's doing now. I will say in the book, Jeff Mudgett's book, he talks about training someone to carry out the Jack the Ripper murders. And it's really interesting because we read in the papers at the time when we were doing the Jack the Ripper story that there was an American doctor who could not be named who was looking for harvesting organs.
Yep.
That was clearly in the paper, 100%. And when I did this story, I realized that there may have been 3 American doctors doing it, probably just Holmes. Like it was, I would say 99%, it was him they were talking about. There's no effing doubt in my mind.
I believe, well, maybe there were, it would have been a very small number and a very high probability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very high probability. But you have to be a doctor who is obsessed with anatomy and can carry off these things too, you know? What do you guys think? Where should I go with this? You think, are you guys kind of closured?
I have closure. I think you brought it home full circle. But I think we must ask the real judge, Sable, how do you feel? At the end, is this a worthy conclusion?
I do want to read other books. I read Eric Larson's book a long time ago before we started the podcast, The Devil in the White City. I didn't read it for this. I would like to incorporate that in if I do another story on this. But as of now, like I just got like this guy. This was the hardest story, man, because it's just so much that just changes, you know?
There's a lot of movement, whether it's from state to state or country to country or methods of killing.
Super fascinating. Thank you, Sable. Thank you, John.
Yeah,
I do think it would be really interesting to pursue the whole like mapping of dates with the Jack the Ripper stuff and seeing if we can make that connection, you know what I mean? At some point, maybe with the help of AI to like cross-reference. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
that would be interesting.
Yeah, but that's the hard thing about it because as you saw, like Holmes didn't just travel to a state, book 3 different hotels for 3 different people. He did that, yes, but he also put out a paper trail that he was in another state at the same time or in another country. Like he did things so methodically to throw people off his scent. It's literally insane. Like how he did that. It's truly remarkable. There's another book written by Frank Geyer, who was the detective that caught him. If it wasn't for, you could do a whole story on this just with Frank Geyer because he was like, what's that guy that caught the Bonnie and Clyde, Frank Hammer? Same type of shit, just this obsessive guy. If it wasn't for his obsession to catch this guy, he would have never been caught, ever. But this guy he did everything he could and he was not going to stop until he caught him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if it wasn't for Frank Geyer, the regular police would have not pursued this like it was, and he would have gotten away with it. You know, he would have got better at hiding all the bones. And as his net worth grew, you know, he could have been like a Rockefeller or something, you know? I mean, I don't know. Crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a crazy story. I'm just done with it, I think.
I mean, I think you are done. Like, I don't think you left anything out.
No, I left a ton out.
No, I think you did a great job covering it.
Yeah, but otherwise it would have been like 15 parts, which could have been, but, you know.
Yeah.
7 was probably good.
Yeah. I mean, going through the list of victims, what we have, poison, we have a lot of torture, we have suffocations, we have slow starvations, we have boiled in steam in the kiln. We have a bunch of stuff. You know, we do have...
vat of acid.
Yeah, we do have like the basement would be like one of the killing operations. They did find elevators that went down into the basement on every floor of the house. The castle was burnt down quickly after he was arrested. Mysterious fire. Same thing that happened to Ed Gein's property. So we'll never know the extent of what was in there, but crazy. And to sum him up, he killed for personal monetary gains mostly, but he also enjoyed it. He made a lot of money doing it because he was killing and he was skinning the skeletons and selling them to med schools. He was selling cadavers. He was getting life insurance policies. I mean, there were people that came out and said that Holmes went up to him and basically asked him to take a $10,000 policy out on himself. And they almost did it too. Like there was plenty of cases like that, you know?
Yeah.
So, but he was just a killing machine, man. Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to go to bed. You know, until next time, good night, you lovely, lovely people.
Kind of run this shit.